Revenge is a dish best served as lunch. Now I'm going to come to explain why I've changed that popular phrase and saying. Think about how people interact today in modern culture, in modern society, in politics, in issues of great importance or issues that people have a strong opinion of. It seems to me that we are more angry than ever as people. And it's not that we're just developing a sense of anger and frustration with other people that may be opposing to us. Society seems to be developing this deep level of contempt for people who you disagree with. Now, the world will say, when you come to a situation like that, either withdraw, ghost, disappear, cancel, depart from the other party, just keep your distance completely, or you will have the right to show your contempt. You have the right to show disdain, to despise, particularly when you deem that somebody has mistreated or is hostile towards you. Now let's say it for what it is. In the Bible will give us two areas to go to. Either we're loving people or we're actually showing hate towards people. And people will say, that's not me. I'm not doing that. But the Bible will give us a strong sense that we're actually hating people we are in contempt of. Now, hatred of this kind seeks one thing and one thing alone, and that is revenge. Get even, exact revenge. Give somebody a taste of their own medicine. From a pound of flesh in Shakespeare, if you ever studied that around A-levels or at school, from the pound of flesh to, if you can think back to the movies of the late 1980s, The Bunny Boiler, you know, for anyone who can remember that far back, or the iconic movie of Jaws, where the human lead actually says, this time it's personal. I mean, it's a shark. Sharks are hungry, right? And so we've got all of those different allusions. I'm sure there are 1,000 modern examples in series of people getting back, people enacting revenge, coming to revenge. We see it in politics, don't we? Somebody does something, somebody has to respond and get back, get even. We see that all the time. And even quite a serious matter that demanded some law change recently is something called revenge porn when it came to relationships. Now, I just have to give you an added warning. Be very careful when you're researching that, okay? If you want to know a bit more about what that is. But it did demand that the law changes because people would use certain images or footage to get back at somebody they were in a relationship with. Now, in the wisdom of Mr. Miyagi, yes, Karate Kid fans, Mr. Miyagi, he actually said, before seeking revenge, first dig 2 graves. And we know exactly what he is meaning and alluding to. So revenge can come in various forms, but it always involves hurting or punishing one that we think has hurt or mistreated or harmed us. Revenge is an acid, and an acid can do as much damage to the container it's in as well as whatever it's poured out on. So we have to think very, very carefully about what we are feeling deep inside when it comes to acts of revenge. Now, culture today means it's so easy to get offended. A culture that's professing inclusion and tolerance is so easy that when we disagree, that needs offense, and we're going to be so offended. Here's a proverb in the Bible for wisdom. It says, good sense makes one slow to anger, Is that what is said about you? Is that what is said about me? Good sense makes one slow to anger, and it is to one's glory to overlook an offence. After all, that's exactly what Jesus has done for us. He's overlooked the things that we have done to bring us grace and forgiveness. Now, I'm not talking here serious moral breaches, and I'm not talking damaging behaviours or illegal crimes, but I am talking about disagreements, fallouts. I am talking about when somebody has done something that you deem has mistreated you in some kind of way, and I would encourage you to refuse to be offended, because that's just like God, being just like God. Reflect and refuse not to hold a grudge, not to retaliate in any form just because of what someone has done to you. We want to be set apart from the way that the world acts. Now, is this difficult? Extremely difficult to do. Is it powerful? I think it is definitely powerful. Is it Christ-like? And that's a great question to ask in any situation. Am I being Christ-like? Certainly. When we overlook offences, we are certainly being Christ-like. Now, what's this got to do with Samson? I may hear you cry. Hashtag Samson stories. Well, Samson believed he had found a way to manipulate everything for his own advantage. But we find out in the Samson story that if the Lord is not with you on any particular matter, eventually you run aground. And in Samson, there is a problem deep inside of him. There is a problem before he gets to any problem. What is going on in him is the way he starts to behave when he comes to another problem. So there is a problem before the problem. Now, there are differences between a life lesson and a life sentence. You know what a life sentence is? It's the way it's going to be. It's going to prison you for the rest of your life. But life lessons are things that you learn so that you can change, you can transform, you can be something different. So avoiding certain kinds of things, certain kinds of situations, certain kinds of people is not weakness, it's wisdom. We all have to be wary of people who act like they are the victims in the situation that they themselves have created. And so that's a life lesson. It shouldn't be a life sentence for you. Now, if you want to be like Jesus, you can't be the star of your own reality show. That's what Samson was like. And too many of us today, even in our own modern world and modern culture, we try to act like the star in our own reality documentary of the things that are going on in life. Revelation 22 says that Jesus is the bright and morning star. And what that means is that Jesus is not only the divine ruler of the universe, he's the one who created it all, and his plan will come through for you if you allow him to guide your life. So I think being part of a healthy church and part of a healthy church culture, a part of being a follower of Jesus that is progressing, you need places where you are known by others because you're relating really well to other people. You need places where you're needed. You've got a way to live out your gifts, your talents, your purposes, and find something of that in the bigger purpose of God. You don't need a place to shine. You don't need a place where you have to look better than everybody else. Now, of course, you're going to say to me, but what happens about other people? Other people are surely the problem. We see a lot of that in Samson's story too. But you can be confident that rotten fruit shrivels up by itself. So some things you're just going to have to let play out over some time. Now let's come to the story. Judges chapter 15. I'm going to read these first 11 verses so you can see a little bit how the story of Samson is progressing. And it says this: later on, during the wheat harvest, Samson took a young goat as a present to his wife. He said, I'm going into my wife's room to sleep with her, but her father wouldn't let him in. I truly thought you must hate her her father explained, so I gave her in marriage to your best man. But look, her younger sister is even more beautiful than she is. Marry her instead. Now Samson said, this time I cannot be blamed for everything I'm going to do to you Philistines. Then he went out and he caught 300 foxes. He tied their tails together in pairs, and he fastened a torch to each pair of tails. Then he lit the torches, and he let the foxes run through the grain fields of the Philistines. He burned all their grain to the ground, including the sheaves and the uncut grain. He also destroyed their vineyards and olive groves. Who did this? The Philistines demanded. Samson, was the reply, because his father-in-law from Timnah gave Samson's wife to be married to his best man. So the Philistines went and got the woman and her father and burned them alive. Because you did this, Samson vowed, I won't rest until I take my revenge on you. So he attacked the Philistines with great fury and killed many of them. Then he went to live in a cave in the rock of Etam. The Philistines retaliated by setting up camp in Judah and spreading out near the town of Leel. The men of Judah asked the Philistines, why are you attacking us? And the Philistines replied, we've come to capture Samson. We've come to pay him back for what he did to us. So 3,000 men of Judah went down to get Samson at the cave in the rock of Etam. They said to Samson, don't you realize the Philistines rule over us? What are you doing to us? But Samson replied, I only did to them what they did to me. I mean, what a story. The escalation and the level of escalation in this story is quite shocking. And I do believe nobody does right in this story. Nobody is doing what God would want. God would not be endorsing anybody, and certainly not one person over another. God would want to deal with everybody in this story. Nobody's actions here are excused at all. Just because it's in the Bible doesn't mean that God is pleased about what was going on. What God does do is use all things to bring about his purpose and plan. He allows us in our freedom and our free will and our choice to make our own decisions about our own behaviours and our interactions with others. And God will always turn things towards his plan and purpose, but he isn't endorsing anybody's behaviour. And notice what Samson starts to say. It's what they did. I mean, you need to almost put on a little childish voice when you say that, don't you? It's what they did to me. It's what they did to you. I'm only getting them back, what they did. It's what they did. It's almost like, who started it? They started it. They're the ones that if they hadn't have done this, I would not have done that. You know, you can hear all of this within the story. Now, of course, if you've got a sibling, you'll know a little bit what that was like growing up. And if you're a parent, then likewise, you will have seen how siblings wind each other up, and what that's like in the back seat of a car or in another particular scenario. You'll only have had to have been in a soft play area full of a bunch of toddlers to know what would happen when somebody starts something and somebody has to get back. And of course, it goes right the way through in the Bible through sibling issues, Cain and Abel, Jacob and Esau, and even in modern television towards the Dutton family on the Yellowstone Ranch and everything else that's going on around what other people will do to each other. You will have countless examples from your own human experiences, from what you see in fiction and entertainment and what you know goes on out into the world. But look how Samson reacts. He is content that all of his acts of violence and disorder are justifiable behaviors, justifiable actions, because they started it. They did something to me. Now, technically, it started because Samson did not fulfill his Nazirite vow to be set apart for God. And technically, it started because Samson wasn't being obedient to God. He was doing his own thing. He was doing what was right in his own eyes. And so technically, Samson should have had a wife from his own tribe, from his own people, but he wanted something different. He was led by what he wanted. So technically, that's what starts it. It starts because Samson takes a wife from the Philistines. But he isn't being a good husband. He isn't treating her well. What he's actually doing is using her for certain things, using her because he feels he can take what he wants. So after a period of Samson going off and doing his own thing, he comes back to his wife and he brings a goat with him. Now, I'm not even going to go there, okay, except to say that I think 3,000 years ago that it was a cheap gift for services rendered. So I don't think a goat is a good Valentine's gift, by the way. So I'm just putting that out there for your note and wisdom going forward. He comes back to his wife because he wants to sleep with her, and he brings a goat. He brings like a cheap gift to that shows what Samson thinks. And the father-in-law panics because he's given the wife away because he thinks Samson is offended and he needs his daughter to be looked after. He gives the wife away to Samson's best man. Now, it isn't quite the best men of today because normally they're a lifelong brother or a best friend that you've had throughout the rest of your life. That's what normally a best man was. Samson didn't have any friends. It was like a rent-a-crowd. So his best man was somebody that was brought in for the purposes of fulfilling the wedding. So the father-in-law gives the wife away to the best man. And women are being used terribly throughout this sequence because then the father-in-law says, oh, well, don't worry about that daughter. I've got another daughter. You can have her as well. And so it's all terrible what's actually going on. The father-in-law says to Samson, I thought you were so offended that you didn't want her. But then Samson now takes offense because of the course of action. So look what he does. He catches 300 foxes. Now, think about the time and the effort to hunt down and catch 300 foxes. And he cruelly ties their tails together in pairs. So he's got 150 pairs of foxes. And then he ties a torch, one of the old flaming fire torches, to each pair of tails and sets them on fire. And then he lets them loose through the Philistine grain fields, vineyards, olive groves. Now, of course, imagine all these pairs of foxes pulling against each other. Imagine the squeals and the noise as they zigzag through all of these grain fields. And it would be like firing off missiles in every direction, 150 burning, setting everything on fire. Everything is on fire, and cruelly, I would believe that the foxes, I presume, are burned alive. So this is the destruction that Samson causes. And then the Philistines, because of all of the above, they say, somebody's got to pay for all of this. Look at all this destruction. And they go and get the woman, the wife, and the father-in-law, and they burn them alive in payback for what Samson has done. So what started with foxes now ends with people. And I do want to say to you, No act of revenge can ever recompense. There's never a like for like. Normally, it will escalate. Normally, it'll get worse and worse and worse. So look at these reactions, the escalating reactions. In verse 3, it says, "This time, Samson, I cannot be blamed for everything I'm going to do to you." And in verse 6, the Philistines went and got the woman. They're getting back. In verse 7, Samson says, "Because you did this, I'm going to take my revenge on you." And in verse 9, the Philistines retaliated. In verse 10, they're saying, "We've come to pay him back for what he did to us." And in verse 11, Samson says, "I only did to them what they did to me." Look at all those escalating reactions. Now, revenge is a dish best served as lunch, not cold. That implies you're going to wait for the optimum time just to get back, and it'll taste even sweeter because you've got back at somebody. Actually, in Romans 12, it says that revenge is best served as lunch. Why? Because when you break bread with somebody, you're sitting on equal terms. You're bringing people back into a sense of fellowship. Every time you sit round a table and have a meal with somebody, everybody's supposed to eat that and enjoy it equally. So before things escalate, before you retaliate, before you embark on taking revenge, I want you to read these verses in Romans 12, and I'm going to ask you about what you hold, what you leave with God, and what you're going to do to overcome. What you hold, what you leave with God, and what you're going to do to overcome. So in the Passion Version, I'm going to read verses 17 to 21, and it says this: "Never hold a grudge or try to get even, but plan your life around the noblest way to benefit others." I mean, that's pretty clear, isn't it? "Do your best to live as everybody's friend. Beloved," that's those who are following Jesus, "don't be obsessed with taking revenge, but leave that to God's righteous justice. For the scriptures say, 'Vengeance is mine, and I will repay,' says the Lord. And if your enemy is hungry, buy him lunch. Revenge is a dish best served as lunch. Win your enemy over with kindness, for your surprising generosity will awaken their conscience, and God will reward you with favour." What you hold. We've got a German managing our national football team at the moment, and there is a German word called Schadenfreude. Okay, Schadenfreude. And what that means is, it means to take joy in somebody else's downfall. Now, we wouldn't want him not to be successful. We want him to try and lead the England team to World Cup glory. That's what we want. Schadenfreude is when it doesn't go well for somebody, we're going to celebrate. We're going to have joy in their downfall. Now, it goes a little bit like this. You will say things like, "Serves them right," or "Ha, they're going to get what they deserve," or "Good, I am glad that has happened to them," or "It shows that I was right all along." So in your spirit is the beginning of revenge. Schadenfreude is actually a spirit. It's a sense that something is being held deep within you because you're waiting for somebody else's downfall. Now, what this does is puts you on high moral ground. It makes you superior to everyone else. And you can't do that with the Lord. You can't do that with the cross. Everybody comes to the cross. Everybody comes to grace on equal terms. So is what you hold a spirit of revenge, or is it because of grace? Is it because of the cross? Now, you need to hold to grace and examine your own flaws. Examine yourself. If you ever get onto a An airplane, you know you're supposed to attach your own oxygen mask before helping everybody else. So before embarking on retaliation and revenge, examine your own flaws to what you're holding. Secondly, in these verses from Romans 12, it tells you about what you leave with God, from the very mundane to the extremely serious. Sometimes in the extremely serious, you can't get justice. You can't get what you want to see happen, but you can trust in the end, God will hold everyone to account for the life that they have lived. Now, in the mundane, it was a while back, but in a shopping centre, I held open a door for somebody and they just completely walked through as if I was invisible, as if I wasn't even there. And I couldn't help myself. In that moment, I turned into something like out of Moana, where I was going, you're welcome, speaking it out loud, because obviously I had done something that hadn't even been acknowledged. Now, of course, you can't control how people respond, and you can't even prevent anybody else's cruelty. Sometimes it's not that people get to walk all over you. Sometimes you have to let people walk on. Sometimes you just need to stand aside. Why? Because we can trust this. The Lord will right every wrong. And really, deep down in everybody else's hearts, you can't be the judge of everybody else. Everyone else is off limits. Only God and the Holy Spirit can change anybody, and only Jesus is fully qualified to judge everyone, judge everyone's heart and motives. Now, in Romans 12, this is famously where it says, and it refers to heaping burning coals on somebody else's head. But let me just pull us back. This isn't getting people punished before God. This isn't sending people to hell and to their destruction. The burning coals it's referring to are from Isaiah's vision. Isaiah has a vision of the glory of God. And when he's confronted with the glory of God, he realizes his own sin, and an angelic being touches his lips with a burning coal to remove the sin away. The burning coals are like the altar of sacrifice, which brings atonement. So this is what you should want to happen. You should want people to be made right with God, even your enemy, even the person that you dislike the most. You would want, when you do good things, it's like bringing burning coals on their heads, because you're trying to lead them to atonement, that they would suddenly have their conscience pricked by God, that they would want their sin paid for and the atonement replace judgment. That's what you would want. So that's what you leave with God. You do the right things. You go above and beyond to bless someone else, because you're leaving the judgment, the vengeance, the repaying to God. And then lastly, what you do is overcoming. The Bible says we are not merely to refuse to do evil, we're to overcome evil with good. That's our strategy. Every time you see evil in this world, you should want to outdo it with good. The answer is not going to be disagree less or call people out more. We're told to call everybody out now. The answer is to outdo other people with good. Outdo them with the love of Christ. You see, Jesus died on the cross, and there wasn't one hint of I'm right and you've all got it wrong. He actually wept for people. He actually overcame evil by doing a greater good. Stephen, in the book of Acts, follows Jesus' example. When he's being stoned, he asks the Lord for their forgiveness because they don't know what they're doing. And as he enters into God's glory because he's martyred for his faith, Stephen lights a fire of good overcoming evil. I think in Acts, one of Stephen's best friends would have been Philip. Philip and Stephen served together in the early part of Acts, and Philip becomes this well-known evangelist through his ministry. Later on, at the end of Acts, he actually has in his home Paul, the Apostle Paul, who did great things to take the mission of God and the kingdom of God further. But Paul, in his former life, would have been Saul, the one overseeing the stoning of Stephen. What an amazing act of good overcoming evil that Philip, probably one of the best friends of Stephen, is now hosting and being hospitable to Paul as he sees his life transformed and he sees it changed. So the question always is, what good can I do? How can I outdo this situation by bringing more good and more love? So you may not be a world leader, and you may not have the control of justice, and you may not be able to change other people's behaviours or actions, and you will be challenged to pay back somebody who's hurt or mistreated you, and you will have the challenge to retaliate almost every single day. So we need to be strong in this area. We're not to be like Samson. The story of Samson is a life lesson, not a life sentence, but a life lesson for us to act in a completely different way, to be more like Christ than to be like Samson. So learn the art of overlooking. Learn that revenge is a dish best served as lunch. Maybe you need to confess some things before the Lord. Maybe you need to come to reconciliation with another person. Maybe you just need to commit your life, your situations, your worries, your stresses, even when people have hurt or offended you, and commit them to the God. And maybe you need to entrust other people into God's loving care too. But most of all, this story of Samson is showing us that if you're strong, you're just going to hit back. You're just going to pay back. But when you are weak, then you truly are strong. Why? Because you're depending on the grace of God to lead you into the right behaviours and the right course of action. God bless you as you live out this message. Go away and live it out, that revenge is a dish best served as lunch.
Hello, my name's Naomi. It's been great to have you with us for our message here at Renewal. If you want to find out more about what it means to follow Jesus, you can visit renewalcc.com/next steps, and you'll be sent a few videos which might answer some of those bigger questions that you might have. Likewise, maybe you just want to say hello to the team, so you can email hello@renewalcc.com. And then if you're really enjoying all of these videos, what you can do is click the subscribe button, which is the wonderful red button that you cannot miss on your screen, to be notified of any other videos that come in. You can also listen to our messages on the go. So if you visit renewalcc.com/media, you'll be able to see podcasts, and then that will also link you to the YouTube channel. But maybe actually you just want to support the work that Renewal is doing. And you can do that by visiting renewalcc.com/give, and you can choose where your finance goes. All that's left to say is take care, God bless, and have a great week. Hopefully we'll see you soon.